Namaskar, brothers and sisters. I'd like to welcome you all to the second module of our Online Graduates Intermediate course. And our presenter today is Ramesh, Brother Ramesh, Bjonnes. Ramesh is the head of the Prama Wellness Institute in North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina. And he has extensive experience and knowledge in all aspects of natural healing, and he's conducting lots of programs there in the Prama Wellness Institute related to that. So his topic is quite interesting, synergistic solutions. Another way to say it is like all of the six, sort of major components of our natural yoga treatment movement are included in these 6 points. So he's going to share generally that. And we're looking forward to this presentation. Our meeting will be about a 90-minute long, and he's prepared quite well with questions and questions. So I hope you'll enjoy it, and feel free to ask anything as we're going along to him. So without further, Dada Dharmavidananji may join, but he had just a last-minute glitch, actually. That's why there's a new link tonight. Because some very unusual thing happened that he said he went to Kolkata where the connection is better, but the government of India has cut off the internet connections because there's some riots happening in Muslim riots happening in Kolkata. So unfortunately, Dada may not be able to join us tonight. Nevertheless, we'll go ahead. Niranjan's here. Good to see him, and I won't take longer. Over to you, Ramesh. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Dadaji, for that introduction. So, as you said, I've been working at the Prama Wellness Center for the last 8 years or so. And I want to just give a brief introduction to myself and why I'm here and why I've been doing this work.
Maybe you can stop the screen share for a sec. That'd be okay?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so 15 years ago, we started the Prama Institute here in Asheville, North Carolina in the United States. And when I arrived here, I was actually sick. I had prostatitis. And I think it was about 2 years into it that Dada Dharmavidananda came and gave a weekend retreat. And before I arrived, I had studied Ayurveda, and apparently not enough or not deeply enough to really understand that in order to heal disease, we need to get at the root cause of disease, which is generally the lifestyle or the activities, the behavior that have caused the disease in the first place. Even though I intellectually understood some of that, I didn't understand it practically. Before Dada Dharmavidananda came and gave this workshop, and he basically said that, which, intellectually I knew, fix your digestion, cleanse, detox, and then build up, and rejuvenate. And that's what I did. I did a 2 weeks juice fast, and then follow that with the graduated fast. And on day 22, 23, all of my symptoms that I had suffered from for 3 years, tried pretty much everything from all kinds of crazy horse cures to allopathic medicine, homeopathy, and so on, and nothing really helped. And so that was 15 years ago or so, 13 years ago. And then not too long after that, I went to Cebu in the Philippines and then studied with Dada. And then coming back, we decided that this was such a powerful experience that it would be a great idea to start a wellness center at the Prama Institute, and that's what we did. So during these 8 years that we've been doing this, I have experienced the power of these 6 pillars and the importance of the synergy between all of these 6 pillars. I have especially found that those people that practice asanas and meditation, in addition to following a good alkaline diet, have the most success. I have also experienced the incredible power of fasting, and I'll share a simple story to illustrate that. You know that intermittent fasting has become sort of a buzzword in health circles today. And it dawned on me when I experienced this situation, the power of fasting or intermittent fasting. This woman was 55 years old. She had been diagnosed with fatty liver disease. And when I sat down for the interview and I asked her about her diet, you have to remember that this is in the United States. The diet is American Western, the standard American diet, or the SAD diet, as we say here. She said, for breakfast, I have bacon and eggs and fried potatoes. And, you know, being in America, that is not so unusual. And then she said, the rest of the day, I only eat candy. And, you know, I was like, wow. And I asked, you mean you're doing this every day? Is that your standard diet and standard way of living? And she said, yes. And I'm thinking to myself, of course, I didn't say it out loud. I thought, how come you're not dead? How come you're still alive on that kind of a diet? You should be dead. You're 55 years and you're telling me you've been doing this for 25 years. Then she says, at 4 o'clock, I do something really strange. And then I'm thinking, what's coming now? You know, what kind of a diet or item in the diet is coming now? She said, at 4 o'clock, I stop. You mean you stop eating? Yes, I don't eat after 4 o'clock. And bingo, I understood then why she was still alive. Because she was literally fasting from 4 o'clock until breakfast. So I'm just sharing this story, not to, of course, inspire people to live on a bacon and eggs and fried potato and candy diet, but to give a little insight into the power of fasting and or what is often called intermittent fasting, meaning you're eating in a certain window of time, usually between 8 to 12 hours of the day, and then you're fasting for the rest of the time. So fasting is incredibly powerful. But as I said in the beginning, it is when people are putting all of these 6 pillars together, and especially, as I said in the beginning, when people are practicing meditation and asanas in conjunction with the diet, the use of water, the stimulation treatments, and so on, then this system truly becomes a synergistic system. Finally, I also want to mention that in the United States and in the Western world in general, there are some problems that are not necessarily directly addressed in these 6 pillars. And that is a certain number of people that are suffering from addiction. And what I have found then is that often what is necessary is for them to consult with an addiction counselor. Addiction could be addiction to alcohol, it could be drugs, but also addiction to food, cravings, food cravings. The first seminar we had here by Dada Shiilabharananda, he talked about the microbiome. And when the microbiome, which was certainly the case for me, when the microbiome is out of balance, that often causes food addictions. Literally, the microbiome is looking for sweets or bread or cheese or whatever the food is, whatever the junk food is, or whatever we have eaten too much of, and it is literally starving for these items in between the meals, and that in itself can cause these kinds of addictions. But there are also, of course, emotional addictions and emotional issues. So all of these have to then be addressed in a synergistic fashion. So with that, I would like to start with the presentation, and so I'm going to share the screen. So as you all know, I think most of you have taken this course, you know these 6 pillars. So we're going to go through each one of them, and I'm going to add some of my own experience to these points and draw from Ayurveda and also from functional medicine and general holistic medicine to add to some of these points. So without further ado, let's start with water. So we know, all of us know, that drinking water is very, very important, and this is one of the key elements of the 6 pillars. We also know that we need to drink generally more water than we think we need, and especially if you're living in a very warm climate. So the amount of water that we drink depends on a few things. It depends on the climate that we are living in. So in the wintertime, in colder climates, we need less water than in the summertime in Manila or India when it is very hot. And if we are working outside, if we are running and exercising outside, then we need even more water. So again, we need to take that into account. And then, of course, we also know that when we are sick, we need even more water, because water in itself is a powerful healer, especially when people have skin diseases. So why is it that people with skin disease need a lot more water? Well, what is the cause of most skin diseases? Most skin diseases are caused because there is a general breakdown of the digestive system, the lymphatic system, and the glandular system. And especially if people have serious skin disease like psoriasis and so on, then it has become an autoimmune disease, and then water is very, very important. But at the same time, autoimmune diseases can also be caused by stress, by trauma. And again, that's why thinking in a synergistic fashion and asking questions of the client. What is your background? Have you suffered trauma? What is the stress in your life? And so on. We had a young girl at the wellness center, and Dada knows well about this case. She was 14 years old and she had an autoimmune disease. She was partly crippled due to that. Now, she was on a graduated fast for 10 days when she was staying with us, and her inflammatory response went down 50% just during 10 days. Pretty amazing. But of course, her main problems were psychological, emotional. And in situations like that, they also need to be addressed. So we also know that it is best to drink water before meal, sometime before the meal and after a meal, and not during the meal. And so what is the reason for that? What is the reason for? Because we are diluting the digestive juices. The stomach needs to be very acidic. The bloodstream is alkaline, but the stomach, the digestive system in the stomach, needs a certain amount of hydrochloric acid in order to be able to digest properly. And when we are drinking water during the meal or right before the meal, which is very common when someone goes to a restaurant, the first thing that happens, they get, a lot of ice and water, and then they sit there drinking for half an hour. They literally kill their digestive power before the meal, and then they may have a heavy meal, and the rest is history, as we say. So we don't want to do that. So we need to be aware and take care regarding that. Then when do we drink all this water? Well, we start early in the morning. As soon as we wake up, we start drinking water during the morning, the mid-morning, afternoon, and then less in the evening, because otherwise we'll go to the bathroom all night. So
Ramesh, there's a question in the chat here. How did you measure her inflammatory response?
through a blood test. So this was done by a doctor. It was measured, yeah. So they took the blood test before and then a blood test after. So I just want to go through this very quickly because we have limited time. But here are some other benefits of drinking water. It helps create saliva. We need saliva in order to digest the food. It helps to regulate the body temperature, especially when we are hot. If we don't drink water and we are dehydrated, it can be very dangerous. Protects the tissues, the spinal cord, and the joints. Helps excrete waste through the urination, sweat, and defecation. Helps maximize physical performance. Prevents constipation. We know that many people who are constipated, one of the main causes is because they are dehydrated. It aids in digestion. So the digestive system, as we know, is quite a sophisticated, complex ecological system that needs water in order to perform all its functions. Helps in nutrient absorption. So in other words, if we don't drink enough water, we cannot absorb the nutrients properly. It improves blood circulation because everything is liquid. We are 80% water. Reduces illnesses like acidity and urinary tract infection. Improves energy, improves the mood, and many other functions. So water is a powerful healer and very, very important for our general health. So now I want to focus on the second point in the 6 pillars, or the second pillar. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. What are some of the main signs of good health? And I want to sort of focus on a few of those. What are some signs of good health in this system?
Good energy.
Good energy. Yeah, good energy all day. Yeah, very good.
Regular healthy bowel movements.
Regular healthy bowel movements. Very good. And if we have good energy all day, what do we do generally at night?
Sleep well.
Better, yeah.
Exactly, we sleep well. So sleeping well gives us good energy, or sleeping deep, it depends. Different people need different amounts of sleep. Some need to sleep longer, some less. Depends on how much meditation we do and so on, and many other things. But yeah, these are the 3 main conditions for good health. And one more question: what are the 2 main causes of disease? And this is not just something that we in this program is teaching. This is becoming general knowledge among holistic doctors. Dr. Andrew Weil, Dr. Holistic, as we call him in the United States, is well known here, maybe also outside of the United States, but he's basically saying the same thing. And what is that? What are the two main causes?
I put
Someone
in
is suggesting eating in between meals,
snacking,
lifestyle habits, toxins. Yeah, so more or less right. Yeah, stress. Sheila says stress. Exactly. Basically physical problems and mental problems. So stress is generally a mental problem, but stress and physical problems due to bad or imbalanced lifestyle habits. Those are the two main causes of disease. And Dr. Andrew Weil is saying exactly the same thing. I was traveling from Europe back to the United States, and I was reading his newsletter, and I was like, wow, yeah, he is saying exactly the same thing as I learned during this course. So these are the two main reasons, and then there are secondary reasons. Okay, so let's get into this issue with food, the importance of food. So we know these are very common sense aspects of food. I'm not going to discuss them in any great detail. I think they're kind of general terms, general concepts that are easy to understand. What I want to talk about is this, the difference between acid forming and alkaline forming food. This is such an important issue. And I want to get into this in some detail because I was actually misunderstanding this for 2 years when I was working in the wellness center. I had a simplistic understanding of this, and I was in some ways giving people wrong scientific information. However, even though I was giving them some wrong information, they were healing. The system worked. You know, eating an alkaline diet and so on had powerful healing effects. But some of the information I gave was wrong, and I'm going to get back to that in a little bit. But acid-forming food is simply food that is difficult to digest. It creates more hydrochloric acid, need more enzymes and so on in the stomach to digest acid-forming food. This formula is so simple and so powerful, and it is unique to our system. When you go online, you'll find so many different concepts about acid-forming food and alkaline-forming food. One of the most famous writers on fasting, juice fasting, she's often called the juice lady, in the United States, lists foods like lemon, which we know has an alkaline effect, as acidic in one of her books. Now, most of the rest of the information is great, but so many people have it wrong. When Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who's one of the most famous alternative doctors in the United States, came to the wellness center, we organized a day-long seminar. We had about 150 people came, and towards the end of that seminar, someone raised their hand and said, "Can you talk about alkaline food?" And he looked down at the guy and he said, no, I don't want to talk about that. That's, very controversial. Then he went on and finished his lecture. It was at the end of his lecture. As we were driving back to the wellness center and he was in the car, I was still wondering, why didn't he answer that question? So I asked him, why didn't you answer him? He said, oh, it was at the end of the lecture. It's a very controversial point. Many people misunderstand, and so on and so forth. But then I said, but the food that you're promoting the plant-based food that you're promoting is alkaline, isn't it? And then he looked at me and said, of course it is, you know that. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of misinformation about this point, and it is very important for us to be able to explain what those issues are. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit. So because acid-forming food is difficult to digest, then alkaline food is simply easy to digest. So this is a genius formula that is so easy to remember. And when we are teaching these points, really make people understand that. I've had people come back 2 or 3 times to retreats, and they still don't quite understand it. Then they come up with, alkaline water is so important and blah, blah, blah. And I try to tell them that, no, if you have a bad diet, then alkaline water is not going to do anything. And so I need to take time to explain to them why that is. I had a guy that had leaky gut and IBS. And he was, when I visited his house, he had a $4,000 alkaline water system in his house. That didn't do anything for him because he had a terrible diet. He was eating meat and fish 3 times a day and nuts in between because he wanted to become, Arnold Schwarzenegger and have big muscles and so on. But it ruined his digestion. So this is a very, very important point. And you all know that the most alkaline foods is basically to drink juice. Fruit and vegetable juice is the most alkaline way to ingest food. And then the second most alkaline is to be on, we could say, a graduated diet of the same foods, but in solid form. Non-starchy fruits and vegetables. These are the most alkaline foods. And then the semi-alkaline foods are these. And what is important here is this nuts and seed category in small quantity, well chewed and not fried. Why I'm mentioning that is because nuts and seeds are so important in our diet, and we are generally not eating enough nuts and seeds in our diet because they are one of the best ways to ingest proteins and fats. Better than getting the fat from oil, it is much better to get the fat from nuts and seeds and avocado than it is from oil itself, because any kind of refinement of the food, any kind of alteration of anything will reduce some of the nutritional quality of that food. So nuts and seeds, and best if we soak them, because then they become even more easy to digest, and so on. So this is very important. And tofu and tempeh, but not fried, because we know that when we fry food, then it becomes more acidic. So let us move to the next point, semi-acid forming foods. So these foods are good for healthy people in smaller quantities. Now we're getting into the grain and the legume category of foods. So in other words, when we look at the plate, let's say a dinner plate, these foods should be in the smaller quantity. So the rice and the legumes should be in smaller quantity as compared to the vegetables. And this is one of the things that Dr. Joel Fuhrman, he has a food pyramid. It is not entirely vegan or vegetarian. He has some meat and fish in it. But the bottom of the pyramid is vegetables. the bottom layer of that pyramid is vegetables. So that should be the majority of the food. Then the second tier is fruits and vegetables. So fruits in lesser quantity than vegetables. And then comes this. So in other words, it dawned on me when I saw it, like, wow, this is an alkaline food pyramid. It lists basically the foods that are the healthiest are also the most alkaline. So in other words, this idea of alkaline acidic food is not some new age voodoo idea. It is based on science. It is based on experience. So we were talking about unrefined grains, nuts, and seeds in the semi-acidic forming foods. Now we're getting into the acid forming foods. And now we're getting into the refined grains, sugars, black tea, coffee, and vegetarian junk food. So in other words, there's a huge difference between white rice and brown rice, because white rice, you're basically taking away most of the nutrients. Same thing with white flour. One of the reasons why we have white flour is because they found that in the old days, when they didn't have proper storage facilities, that the mice and the rats, they didn't like the white flour. They liked the real stuff. So it was better and easier to store the food when they had removed all of the nutritional qualities from the food. So these foods are highly acidic, and that is why I have found that many people who are vegetarian or vegan, but they're junk food vegetarians and vegans, and I was one of them for a few years of my life. When I had a very stressful job, I ended up as a junk food vegetarian, and that was one of the causes to my disease. So it doesn't matter whether we're vegetarian or vegan if we're eating the wrong foods, if we're not eating healthy and having a balanced diet and so on. We may be meditating, practicing asanas, but we are still unhealthy. And I think we know that. We see that around us, that people that are yogis, meditating, they may have a beautiful spiritual life, but physically they're not as healthy as they could be because of wrong diet, wrong lifestyle. And that is why it's so important to educate people about these things. And then finally, the extremely acid forming foods, which it says here, eliminate or minimize. And because, many of the people that come to our wellness center are not vegetarians, they're not vegan, and they don't want to be vegetarian and vegan. So we have to then be practical. We have to teach them step by step. And what I found is, going back to the person that I mentioned earlier, the one that had the Kangen alkaline water system in his house, he was a fisherman. He was living on the coast here in North Carolina. He would bring people out to catch these huge fish. He was paid a lot of money for doing that. When he was healed, he stayed at the wellness center for 10 days. After 6 or 7 days, his nausea went away. He was completely healed. He went back. He wrote me 3 months later. He said, I have become a vegan, believe it or not. I mean, the guy was eating fish, almost all day long. Then he wrote 6 months later, he said, I had started to doing catch and release, meaning he would then bring people out, caught the fish, but he would tell them, no, you can't eat the fish because this is a catch and release operation. He changed because of his vegan new lifestyle. Then he said, now I can't even do that anymore because I'm experiencing the fish is suffering when I catch it. So I stopped the whole business. He became a realtor. And then he invited me down to his real estate company, and we had a big seminar. There was like 40 people in the company, you know. So I'm just sharing this story that sometimes what happens, you know, you think that we should just proselytize and try to turn everybody into a vegan, but I found that it's better to work with people on their terms, to tell them, these are your options. You can be alkaline and have some meat, but you can't be alkaline and eat meat every day. Then they learn Bhavalam Kevalam meditation, because we teach them that. They start practicing asanas, and then they're experiencing, as they become more subtle, they start changing, and then they realize, well, I don't need this meat anymore. So I've seen that many times, that people are changing their lifestyle without, you know, being a fanatic about it. At one time, a woman that was a vegan, and you know, do you know how to tell a vegan?
Yes, they'll tell you they are.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you don't have to, because they'll tell you. Yeah, because, you know, the idea that they're so fanatic that they'll just be there in your face, and they want everybody to become a vegan. And I had one of those at the retreat. After the first workshop, she came out to me, and she was very angry, and she said, "Oh, you need to tell everybody to become vegans, because that's the, you know, the only way to live." So yes, it may be better for many people, but it is not the only way. But because you can be alkaline and be a vegetarian as well. You can have some milk. In other words, you can have a sattvic diet, a yogic diet, without being vegan. And for those who are not ready yet to become vegetarians or vegan, they may have some meat or fish and still be alkaline. This is an important point. So let's take a question. Is there anything positive about having an illness? If you get sick, is there anything positive about it? Anything constructive? Feel free to.
May I?
I think someone is.
Yeah. Hi,
Yeah,
I'm Jaya.
Yes.
Yes, is because it alerts the individual that there is something wrong with the body, and one can take action thereafter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, it's like a wake-up call. Keshava wrote that. Yeah, in other words, it can be a big blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
We get sick, we realize that we need to change, and this can be a very powerful thing. And this is exactly what happened to me. I wouldn't have been sitting here today probably if I hadn't been sick, because the change that I made and the healing change was so powerful, and it was so inspiring to me to feel that simple things like fasting can have such a profound effect when I have tried pretty much everything else, including the best Ayurvedic medicines, by the way, or herbs. So in other words, herbs are not enough. Many times we need to change the underlying disease or the underlying cause of the disease. So I want to spend a little time on this. The buffer system keeps the blood alkaline. What I was teaching wrong in the beginning when I started doing these workshops was that I told people that when you have an alkaline diet, your blood becomes more alkaline. And that is not exactly true. Maybe there's a slight change because the blood is generally between 7.36 and 7.45 pH. 7 is neutral, and above 7 it is alkaline, and below 7 it is acidic. The stomach is around 3 point in acidity. So the stomach is incredibly acidic, and it needs to be, it should be acidic. And that's why, as we were saying earlier, when we drink a lot of water, we create a more alkaline stomach, and that is not good for digestion. We want the stomach to be relatively acidic so that it can digest the food. The blood has to be alkaline. So what happened was, one day I was watching a keto diet proponent on YouTube. And you know, the keto diet is heavily on fats and protein, and especially animal protein. So this was a, 35, 36-year-old guy, very healthy, very athletic. And he was saying, these people promoting this alkaline diet, they're crazy, and they're promoting bunk science. So I really, my ears perked up, got very interested because I wanted to see what he had to say. And he was saying, the bloodstream is always alkaline, and it has to be alkaline because if it becomes too acidic, we will die. Therefore, this alkaline diet system is complete bunk science. And now I'm going to explain to you why. He said, we have a buffer system, and the buffer system takes care of everything in order to maintain the alkalinity of the blood. And then I understood that maybe there's something I'm missing here. I knew that the keto diet, eating a lot of meat and so on, is not a healthy diet, but so I had to figure this out. Why is it that I may have gotten something wrong here? But I also knew there was something wrong in what this guy was saying. So after that lecture, I started doing some research, and what I found was some information from Dr. Kim Ben. Mm-hmm. And he was presenting this idea that the buffer system, yes, it is there to make sure that the blood is always alkaline. However, when we're eating an acidic diet of sweets and refined carbohydrates and meat and fish and junk food, the buffer system goes into a tailspin in order to maintain the alkalinity of the blood, and then it starts affecting the different organs. It has a bunch of side effects, and one of them is osteoporosis. We know that osteoporosis is caused by an acidic lifestyle, an acidic diet, because in order to maintain the alkalinity of the blood, the bones starts leaching calcium into the bloodstream in order to maintain the alkalinity and in order to help the buffer system maintain the balance. So we have the digestive system, the buffer system, and the bloodstream. And all of these three needs to be in balance in order to be healthy. Now, this buffer system, the carbonic acid bicarbonate buffer system, the protein buffer system, the phosphate buffer system, is extremely sophisticated. And I'm not the chemist, so I'm not going to get into explaining this in any great detail. Then we have the exhalation of carbon dioxide, elimination of hydrogen ions from the kidneys and so on. So this is a very, very complex system that is taxed when we're eating a heavy or difficult to digest diet. So I wanted to share that. Maybe some of you already knew all of this, but this was one of these wake-up calls for me, because I realized that I had misunderstood some of these things. Yes, Dadaji, Shiilabharananda.
Baba said that um, acidic food weakens the blood purifying organs, the liver
Yeah,
especially,
yeah,
or
yeah,
blood. So that's why we should be very, very careful to take overly acidic food.
exactly, exactly. And that's exactly right, because as I said, the buffer system goes into overdrive, is not able to keep these organs healthy. So it pushes what it normally would take care of if you're having an alkaline diet would be easy. But then when it can't do that, then the organs are affected. Exactly. So Baba is exactly explaining that. Yeah, Dada Dharma Vedanandaji, you have your hand up?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me
Yes.
right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, now we're not able to hear.
Type the question in the chat,
You're
please.
raspy, Dada.
Type the question in the chat, and Dada Sheila will ask it.
Anybody else with questions?
Yeah, Dadaji may have had a comment regarding this, so maybe he can write it down in the chat and we can get back to it.
Sure.
So yeah, so what Dada Shiilabharananda was saying is exactly right. So, but I hadn't understood this. It took me a little while to figure this out. But so this is a very, very important point, because there are many people who have misinformation regarding what is alkaline food and what is acidic food and how it affects the body and so on. There's a lot of confusion. So I think if we understand this and the sophistication behind this is very, very important. Yeah, Dada Shiilabharananda.
I realized something very, very significant only recently. Because Baba says that bitter foods are very, very good for the liver.
Mm-hmm.
And now my regular routine is in the morning, I take Calmeg and neem leaves, chew it till it becomes a liquid. I swallow that. And I'm taking Triphala. And I also take a spoonful of papaya seeds and chew it again to a liquid pulp. And my digestion is amazing. I've never had such good digestion
Yeah,
in
very
many
good.
years. So it's exactly true that bitter
Yeah,
foods are very, very, and liver is the main organ of the body for elimination.
exactly. Exactly. That is so important. Yeah, because when we have too much refined carbohydrate, sugar, and so on, then that weakens the liver. And the bile becomes toxic. It weakens the bile, and the bile digests sugar and fat. So exactly, yeah, bitter food is very, very powerful, and of course, bitter foods is in all of the green foods. We'll get back to this. So very good.
Anybody who's suffering from diabetes, take a lot of bitter food. You'll be very, very rapidly improved.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, bitter melon is one of the main foods for diabetes to cure diabetes. But of course, changing the whole diet is very important. So this is a quote from I mentioned Dr. Ben Kim. So if your food is acidic, the organs and the cells suffer. Since your buffering systems have to work all the time anyway to neutralize the acids that are formed from everyday metabolic activities, it's in your best interest to follow a diet that doesn't create unnecessary work for your buffering system. And of course, that diet is an alkaline diet. And in his article, he explains that diet, and the diet recommendations that he has are basically the same as what we promote. So my second epiphany came when I realized that Dr. Joel Fuhrman's concept of a nutrient-dense diet is also an alkaline diet. So Dr. Joel Fuhrman is a famous physician in the United States. He has been on PBS, which is a national television program, for years. He's very, very popular, and has had 5 New York Times best-selling books on diet and so on. So what is nutrient density? He's talking about mainly micronutrients. So in other words, all of the nutrients that are in vegetables and fruits, antioxidants, and so on. And nutrient density means maximum nutrients per calorie. So in other words, analyzing food that have the maximum nutrients per calorie equals nutrient density. And the nutrient-dense foods are also the most alkaline foods because they are the fruits and the vegetables, especially the green foods, and especially, as Dadaji was just mentioning, the bitter foods, because the green foods, the salad greens, cauliflower, and so on, the broccoli, I mean, are the green foods and the most alkaline foods. Compares the amount of nutrients to the amount of calories in food. So olive oil has a lot of calories, but it's not very nutrient dense. It has some very good antioxidants, and that is one of the benefits of consuming cold pressed olive oil. That is one of the reasons why the Mediterranean diet is such a good diet, because they're consuming a lot of olive oil. They get a lot of polyphenols, which are a high antioxidant quality in olive oil. But other than that, it doesn't have a lot of nutrient density.
Ramesh, there's a few things that Dada Dharmavidananda is commenting in the chat. If you could try to address it. He says here, Ramesh, you said if you drink too much water, you'll have too much of an alkaline stomach. Please expand on that.
Okay. I didn't say if you drink too much water. I said if you drink it right before you eat or during eating, you are diluting the hydrochloric acids needed for digestion. So in other words, I'm not saying we should drink very little water during the day, but right before eating, drinking a lot of water, or drinking a lot of water during the meal, which is very common, at least in the West, very common in America, drinking ice cold water. Ice cold water, according to Ayurveda, kills the Agni, the fire, the digestive fire, the digestive metabolic energy. So that's what I meant, not drinking it. Actually, Joel Fuhrman is not a vegan, Dadaji.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I also heard from you, that drinking the water just before the meal is not advisable. And that's what we do teach. That's correct.
Yeah, right.
I
was surprised.
Because I asked him to do an intro to my book, Diet for Health and Higher Consciousness, and he refused because he says that I'm drinking milk. No, I take dairy, so he didn't want to have anything to do with recommending my book to anyone. That was about 10 years ago.
Well, that's interesting. Maybe he was vegan at some point, because when he was here, he said that he was not a vegan.
Okay. Dada Dharmavidananda has another question here. Info on the buffer system is very important, not well known by our grads. Ramesh, can you write some key points to include with the write-up of this module?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. I can do that. Yeah, it is really a very important point, and I find that when we learn it, we can easily convince people that are into the keto diet and explain the misconceptions.
We are almost 1 hour into the meeting, so just a heads up, Ramesh, we've got another 30
Yeah,
minutes
I know.
to go. It's so interesting, but yeah, we're going to try to keep the time simply because everybody's on different
Yeah.
time zones.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, this is Dr. Joel Fuhrman's nutrient density chart. And again, so all the nutrient dense foods are in the green column. Kale, collards, bok choy, spinach, broccoli are at the highest. So from 1,000 to 0. Coca-Cola is at the bottom and 1. Olive oil is also towards the bottom, as I just explained. French fries, ice cream, cheese, potato chips, yogurt, and so on and so forth. So all of the acidic foods have very low nutrient density, whereas all of the alkaline foods have a very high nutrient density. So this is an important point. In other words, why are we vegans? Why are we vegetarians? Because this is the natural food to eat. This is not only the ecological and ethical foods that we should eat, but also the most nutrient dense food. So you can find this chart, by the way, online. Look up a nutrient density chart, Dr. Joel Fuhrman, and you can download it, and then you can use it in your presentations and workshops. Also, what is also important is to explain these foods, which is based on the ORAC score, antioxidants. For example, the spice cloves, which is used in a lot of Indian food and in chai and so on, has an ORAC score of 314,000, whereas blueberry, which is one of the most highly antioxidant foods, has an ORAC score of 9,000. White blueberry is 13,000. So in other words, some of the spices like cinnamon, sorghum, oregano, turmeric, 159,000 ORACs, should always be used in the food because they have an incredible antioxidant quality. And especially in the wintertime, drinking chai, using spices like cloves and so on in the food or in the tea is very, very important. So also look up ORAC score and antioxidants. And finally, another chart that I recommend people to look up is the GI and the GL, the
Glucose.
Yeah, the glucose index, basically. So there is the glucose index, which lists how quickly the food turns to sugar. And then the load is in a more accurate way of measuring it. So look up the glucose index, GI, or the GL, the glucose load, which actually gives a more accurate level of how sugar is affecting us. And it is important to eat low on the GI and the GL. So that's another important. So those three, the nutrient density, ORAC score, and the GI and GL are important part of nutrition and diet.
Dada, I want you to explain a little bit about ORAC, O-R-A-C.
He wants me to explain some more?
About ORAC.
What does ORAC mean? ORAC mean?
ORAC means oxygenated radical absorption capacity. So an ORAC is the body oxidizes, meaning the cell structure deteriorates. And so the ORACs are, if we think of that is like the body is rusting, the ORACs, the antioxidants, are like the hammer that knocks the rust off. That's a simple metaphor. So in other words, we need antioxidants in order to do that. And as we age, we need more antioxidants than when we are young.
There's an
As
important.
the aging process, I'm in my late 60s. So as we are aging, we need more antioxidants. So that's a very important point.
There's an important point here in the chat. Sorry to interrupt you, Ramesh. Madhumita.
Okay, oh, that's fine.
When I did analysis of foods on the alkaline forming and acid forming food charts, I found that the alkaline ones had higher levels of the things required for the buffer system: magnesium, calcium, and I'm not sure what K means.
K1 vitamin.
Yeah, vitamin K. The ones that were acidic had higher levels of minerals that tend to form acids, phosphorus, etc. Can't remember the others now as it's 1 a.m. So maybe this also relates to nutrient density? It's her question. Does this also relate to nutrient density?
Maybe to some extent, but this is a wonderful point. I didn't realize that. So in other words, when you're eating that kind of a diet, or an alkaline diet, you are getting more of these nutrition. So yes, in that sense, we could say it relates to nutrient density. But nutrient density is mainly the micronutrients, not the macronutrients. So, like for example, fish and meat have high level of macronutrients, fat and protein, but very few micronutrients, hardly anything.
Dada wants us to.
But of course we need macronutrients and micronutrients, but we want the macronutrients from plants, not from animal products.
Yeah,
so
saying that we're new ideas just a bit fast. Many are not catching. I think it's not too bad. I think anyhow, please ask questions. Raise your hand, ask questions. Ramesh is very open to all the interaction from all of you.
Okay, so what about protein? So for a long time, many vegetarians were told that they are not getting enough proteins because unless they did very intense food combining. This is basically a myth promoted by the meat, dairy, and egg industry, and also a myth promoted by vegetarians themselves, including Frances Moore Lapé, who wrote a book many years ago promoting this idea. But she came out, I think about 10 years ago, saying, I have been promoting a myth. This is not true. If you're eating a balanced vegan or vegetarian diet, you're certainly not getting enough protein. So this protein myth is bunk science, basically. Then the question is, how much protein do we need? And functional medicine doctors, holistic doctors are saying we need about 0.31 to 0.36 grams per pound, preferably of plant-based protein. So if you are weighing about 130 pounds or 59 kilo, you should consume between 40 to 47 grams of protein per day, which is not that difficult when we realize that a cup of lentils have some 20 grams of protein, broccoli has protein, even banana has 1 gram of protein. Pretty much every food has protein, and we don't need to worry about all these food combining. So as long as we are having a balanced meal, so to speak, with vegetables, fruits, legumes, grains, and so on. So this also corresponds to, I will get back to the other point, but I wanted to mention the blue zones. And this is a third epiphany I had when I realized that what these modern scientists are saying corresponds to the diets in the blue zones. There are about 12, 15 blue zones on the planet, places where people live very, very long lives. There are a high percentage of centenarians, people who live above 100. Okinawa is one of those places. Their protein intake is relatively low, between 30 to 50 grams of protein. The same goes for the people in the Hansa, the Athabascans in Russia, the Vilcabamba Indians in South America, the people in different parts of the Mediterranean, and the Loma Linda Seventh-day Adventists in California. 70,000 Christian Seventh-day Adventists are all vegetarians. They also have a high percentage of centenarians. And so, in other words, the way that many people have lived in the past, yogis included, now their lifestyle corresponds to the latest in nutritional science. So this is very, very exciting. So if you compare the Okinawa diet, which is about 16% animal protein, to the American diet, which is about 53% animal protein, you see that Americans, Westerners in general, people from Norway, where I come from, Sweden, Finland, high percentage of diseases linked to too much animal protein. Whereas in places like Okinawa, Athabascans, the Vilcabamba, the Hansas eat even less meat and dairy. Other things that they have in common is that they eat probiotic foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt, and so on. So, and their calorie intake is around 1,800 calories per day, not 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 like many in America. Yes, Dada.
They have strong family ties, and meaningfulness in their life is very important.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, yeah, there are many factors here, but the diet is also an important factor. So macronutrients and micronutrients, we need a balance of those. Macronutrients are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, fibers, bioflavonoids, and so on, antioxidants, phytochemicals. Phytochemicals is sort of the latest in nutritional science, like chia seeds and goji berries and all of these superfoods have hundreds of phytochemicals that are amazing in the diet. And what they have found is that the synergistic effect of these phytochemicals is what gives us this very powerful healing ability. It is not taking like curcumin from turmeric and then selling it as a vitamin or a supplement, which is what the supplement industry does to make a lot of money. That's not the way to go, but it is eating it more or less as natural foods so that we get the synergistic effect of the food in its natural form. That has much more healing power than just separating these different micronutrients or phytochemicals. And again, of course, plant-based macronutrients and micronutrients. And I won't talk much about this because Dada covered this last time about the microbiome, but I just wanted to share this quote. Dysbiosis is a severe imbalance in the bacterial ecosystem, an imbalance of gut bacteria linked to diseases as far-ranging as diabetes, obesity, autism, inflammation, IBS, cancer, asthma, liver disease, and many more. So in other words, having a balanced microbiome is very, very important in order to prevent disease. How do we balance the microbiome? Regular fasting, adequate amount of water, less dairy, animal fat, and refined carbohydrates, prebiotic foods like apricots, asparagus, black beans, bamboo shoots, broccoli, cauliflower, and so on. and then, of course, probiotic food. The prebiotic foods are the foods for the probiotics. Fermented cheese, kimchi yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, Rejuvelac. These are all probiotic. But we need the prebiotics to feed the probiotics. So one thing that I want to mention as a kind of a summing up of this, that when we present our wellness program and the diet and the cleansing and the detox and so on, I have found that in some cases, a juice tea detox, if someone is relatively healthy, they have a good diet, a juice detox regularly or fasting regularly twice a month or 4 times a month is all they need to do. Sometimes it is good to do like a spring cleanse and a fall cleanse. In Ayurveda, they say that fasting when the seasons change is very, very good. Yes, Dalji.
Just a heads up, Ramesh, we got 15 minutes to go. We can go a little bit more, but not too much more than 15.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let me just explain this a little bit more. So for some people, and this was my case, when you have a chronic illness, chronic problem, doing a juice detox, maybe as long as 21 days, 2 weeks, followed by graduated fast, can be very, very important, especially with serious chronic illness. So you need to take time. The deeper the illness, the longer the detox period. Then, the third one I have found is very important, especially in cases of people who are obese and people who have some kind of addiction or food addiction. So because there's a tendency for people like that, after they finish their graduated fast, they may have healed certain things, they tend to go back to the old diet because they still haven't healed, or they have emotional issues, they have addictions. Then a 6-week elimination diet, and especially, at least in the Western context, eliminating dairy and gluten during this time can be very, very important. Because what happens during this time in this elimination diet, where you're reintroducing some proteins, but no sugar, no sweets, no dairy, and no gluten, this is when the microbiome starts to repair itself. And when the microbiome has repaired itself at the end of the 6 weeks, the addictions are relatively much less. And hopefully, if it isn't too much of an emotional addiction, you have been able to overcome those food addictions. Because I've seen that many times people who have food addiction, they can't just do a juice detox and a graduated fast and then be done with it. They tend to go back to the old ways of doing. And then the fourth stage, having a regular diet, vegan, vegetarian, or whatever the diet, but also with intermittent fasting, generally at least twice a month, and then maybe some longer fast in the spring and the fall. So this is a little complex, and we should probably skip it because of lack of time. But one other thing that I found is very important from Ayurveda is this, that Ayurveda promotes the 6 tastes of food and how they relate to the doshas. This can also be extremely helpful in helping people to eat the right kinds of food. Yes, bitter food is very healthy, but too much bitter food for a Vata person is not, will create imbalances. So in other words, if your Vata person eats only bitter food, it is not good. They need fruits, they need sweets, and so on. Or if a Kapha person eats a lot of sweet food, it's not good, and so on. And this is one of the things, these subtle methods is what we can learn from Ayurveda. So if people are interested in that, take a course in Ayurveda, learn about these tastes, and having a little bit of all of these tastes in the food, having some lemon water every day, having squeezed lemon in your food, having bitter foods in all of your meals and so on, so that you're getting a variety of the tastes, create balance. But then when there's imbalance, then decreasing certain foods. So for example, for Vata, avoid bitter, astringent, and spicy nature. They can be consumed in moderation, but not in excess. Similarly, for Pitta, foods that are salty, sour, and very spicy should be reduced, and then increase sweet and astringent and bitter foods. For Kapha, sweet, sour, and salty foods are not so good in high consumption, but better to have a lot of astringent, bitter, and pungent food. So these are some important teachings from Ayurveda. Yes, Dada.
Dada Dharmavidananda is asking, maybe just touch it briefly. Please explain how prebiotics feed probiotics.
Well, I thought that concept in itself is enough. I cannot explain it scientifically in that sense, but all what I have learned is that in order to have a healthy biome or microbiome, we need probiotic foods. But what I missed, and this is what often people miss, they have a rotten diet, they eat junk food, and then they read that you need probiotics. So they go to the health food store and then they buy probiotic pills. But they continue living on a junk food diet. They will have very little benefit because there's nothing to feed those probiotics from prebiotics. Because they're eating unhealthy foods that have no prebiotic elements in it, and that's the importance of the prebiotic foods. So in other words, don't peel vegetables. Even having a little dirt on the vegetables has prebiotic qualities. They have found that gardeners who stick their hands in the ground and then scratch their mouth and get a little bit of that dirt in the mouth, get important prebiotic elements that are healthy for the mind, for the emotions, and that's why they say that gardeners are happy people, because they are getting these prebiotic elements in their body. So that's a little bit about that. Finally, regarding health, these three systems, the digestive system, the endocrine system, and the lymphatic system, are very important to function in symbiotic balance, in synergy, because the digestive system is, when that is reduced, that reduces the vitality and then the immunity. In Ayurveda, we say that first vitality is reduced, then the immune system goes down, because the immune system is linked to the gut. 70% of the immune system is in the gut. So having a good digestive system, as Dadaji was just saying, taking Triphala, if you have a tendency towards constipation, strengthens the liver, strengthens the digestive system. It's very, very important. Then that will also positively affect the endocrine system. I remember a young woman, she was 36 years old. She had Hashimoto's disease. This was some 4 or 5 years ago. And when I sat down to talk with her, she described her diet as being a lot of fried foods, a lot of baked goods and sweets and southern sweet tea and so on. And I said, this was a 1.5 hour consultation. I said, you have to change your diet and you have to fast, you have to cleanse, and then have a good diet after that. Plus, you need to do shoulder stand and fish every day. And because she was a yoga teacher, that was very easy for her. 2 years went by. She came back to the wellness center with a group of students of hers, and we had a little retreat. And she told me, and she looked very different, very healthy. And she told me that she was now off her Hashimoto's medication. She never took the medication again because she changed the digestive system that then affected the endocrine system and, of course, the lymphatic system. And so that balance was restored. And, of course, the asanas, the shoulder stand and fish, which is from Baba's teaching, of course, helped balance the thyroid and the parathyroid gland by closing and opening the thyroid. So these are some of the, or one example of the power of changing our diet, but at the same time using asanas, fasting, and so on in conjunction. I don't think we need to go into this because you all know the importance of being vegetarians or vegans.
We got
And of
about
course-
5 minutes to go, Ramesh.
Okay. And of course, we know that exercise and yoga is very important. And I wasn't planning to spend much time on this anyway. But what I can say is that for those, as I said in the beginning, for those people that do exercise, some kind of aerobic, running, swimming, and also weightlifting, and combining that with asanas and meditation, they do way better than people who don't. So this is really important, that synergy. So so that balance is important. Fasting and graduated fasting is incredibly powerful, and we all know how to do it, so there's no need to get into that. But I just wanted to mention that maybe this part, 60 to 70% fruit juice plus 30 to 40% vegetable juice in the morning, 60 to 70% vegetable juice and 30 to 40% fruit juice for lunch and dinner, so that the majority of the juice is vegetable. And then here are some of the main fruits and vegetables for juicing. One of the things that I often am asked by people is, what about water fasting? And my answer to them is not more than 1 day. Water fasting can be very dangerous. Let's say you're diabetic and you go on a water fast, you will not do well. Or you're hypoglycemic or something like that. So water fasting should not be done unsupervised for more than a day, or a dry fast like we do during Ekadashi and so on. So juice fasting, one of the benefits of juice fasting is that it's very safe because you're getting nutrition and at the same time you're detoxing. You're absorbing very subtle micronutrients to keep you going and to have enough energy. And at the same time, the organs are undergoing a tremendous detox.
There's a small question here. Dada Mantra is saying about if one drinks too much water, one may dilute, he read this, the electrolyte balance in the body. So it may not be essential to drink too much, but sufficient amount according to needs and situation. That's why we recommend 1 cup at a time. That will never dilute the electrolyte balance.
Yeah.
Dada Dharma
Yeah,
is asking to explain the lymphatic system. Well, we don't have a lot of time left, so
yeah. So the digestive system, the endocrine system, the endocrine glands are producing hormones, and that needs to be in balance. The lymphatic system cleanses the blood, and so the lymphatic system needs movement. So if we are couch potatoes, we're just sitting, we are not stimulating the lymphatic system. We need to do, so asana stimulates the lymphatic system, walking, running, biking, swimming, playing tennis, all stimulates the lymphatic system, but also using a loofah sponge stimulates the lymphatic system. One woman that came to the wellness center had some swollen lymphatic glands, and she just started brushing her skin, and in 3 days, the swelling went down. So these are simple things that can be done to balance the lymphatic system. Excuse me. In a study in the June 5th issue of Cell Stem Cells shows that the cycles of prolonged fasting not only protect against immune system damage, a major side effect of chemotherapy, but also induce immune system regeneration, shifting stem cells from a dormant state to a state of self-renewal. I want to mention this because this is another important part. One of the main benefits of fasting is that it induces autophagy or autophagy. I think that some of you have heard of this term. By modulating autophagy, the self-eating or self-cleaning cell, fasting plays a therapeutic role for many diseases. Fasting or calorie restriction creates stress in the body, which initiates a positive stress, which initiates autophagy. This removes or recycles the damaged cells, allowing the body to function efficiently. This was Yoshinori Yosuma from Japan. He's a cell biologist, received the Nobel Prize in 2016 for this, the effect of fasting on autophagy. This is something I found out a few years back, and it was another epiphany that I had when a Nobel Prize winning scientist explained that fasting induces autophagy in the body, meaning that the cells, the deteriorating cells, start repairing themselves. And that is, of course, why we're seeing people with skin diseases or other chronic diseases heal, because literally they're receiving a new body from the cell up. It is an amazing transformation that takes place.
There's a question here, Ramesh, a little bit controversial, but let's just go with it. According to our health system, Anandamarga, what can we think about the repeatedly injections for the COVID, and what, yeah, that's her question.
Yeah, I don't think I want to go into that.
Okay.
I think, yeah, yeah, we don't have time also.
Yeah. We can take another 5-10 minutes for questions, and then we're going to close, not later than 9:49 max.
And then, of course, the fifth point are the different stimulation treatments that, like sauna and the different baths, mud packs, sunbathing, and these ones that are very simple to do: oil pulling, squishing oil, a tablespoon of oil in the mouth, squishing it around for 5-10 minutes. It's very good for oral health, removes toxins, or ama, as we say in Ayurveda. And tongue cleaning, every morning removes ama or toxins from the tongue, which again stimulates the digestive system. And then using a loofah sponge every day is very, very good for the lymphatic system and keeps the cells and the skin healthy. It's very powerful, very simple to do, but incredibly powerful. Finally, of course, meditation. And again, as I said, meditation is powerful because it needs willpower, and it increases the willpower. It needs discipline, and in order to change your lifestyle, you need some discipline. And I found that the people who regularly do meditation, they are the best at implementing these other changes, because meditation gives you that willpower, gives you that inspiration, that depth of understanding and deeper intuition, and to be able to be in touch with your body and your emotions and so on. So meditation cannot be should not be underestimated, and that's why we place a lot of emphasis on that during our programs. And I say, after 40 plus years of meditating, I know only one secret. And then they go, oh, what's that secret? Just do it. like the Nike, advertisement, just do it. Or like the Buddhists are saying, commit to sit. In other words, taking that commitment to sit, to do the practice. Because if we don't show up, it won't happen. If we want to write, we have to sit down and write. If we want to meditate, we have to sit down and meditate.
We're going to share this. We're going to share the recording in our Naturopathy Intermediate course WhatsApp group. It's been created recently, so we'll put it there. About the vaccine, again, it's very controversial. We don't want to go into it. If I can just say one thing, that if we're healthy by following the lifestyle that Ramesh is sharing with us, vaccine, no vaccine, in my humble opinion, doesn't matter.
Yeah, so to just conclude, the synergy of these 6 pillars is what makes it so powerful. And that's what in other words, it is a lifestyle. It is a way of being. It is a way of living. That is what makes it so powerful. Yes, doing 1 or 2 of them, that can be good, but it is the synergistic practice of all of these things that is truly holistic living. Just to take herbs or just to drink more water is not holistic health. Taking an herb to try to heal something is not holistic health. It is having limited effect. We need to change the lifestyle. And by putting all these things together, including taking herbs, yes, we can take herbs. Yes, we can take a multivitamin once every 2-3 days. But that's pretty much it. We don't need a lot of herbs and a lot of supplements if we are having a balanced lifestyle.
That's all what Sri Shiilabharananda has taught us from the very beginning.